Yes, I'm do. Have you ever played a violent video game? Did you feel violent even after playing? Some people believe that whenever you play a violent video game, it can actually encourage you to carry out like real life violence. And there's research that backs this up. I don't agree though, and I think that some of this research could be biased. Before we begin, we must realize that there are many different types of games, and the games are meant to please different types of audiences. One of the most popular types of games is FPS, which is first-person shooter. Even though first-person shooter does include a lot of violence, most games do, and video games are getting more popular. Kevin Lynch proves this by writing an article about Grand Theft Auto 5. Within the first 24 hours of Grand Theft Auto 5 being released, it sold 11.2 million copies, which is about $815 million. I'm 19 years old and play these types of video games all the time, and I don't believe that they make people violent. And P.M. Markley with the American Psychology Association agrees. She theorizes that through popular media, the news is using these games as a way to persuade people, using emotional acts such as shootings and things similar to that. I hope to show that most of the research is aimed toward proving that violent video games are bad. Today we're going to talk about why people think video games are violent, how video games have evolved, and diminish the theory that video games are bad. The first video game that came out was developed in 1958. It was similar to the game Pong, which was later created in 1970. There's many different genres, such as FPS, RPG, strategy, and all include some sort of violence, as I said before. Secondly, games are constantly being evolved to compete with other companies. This leads to more realistic graphics and more violent scenes to capture the audience and the players. Popular media uses this as a way to have games be a scapegoat whenever there is a violent act. Video games are in the news for things such as the Columbine shooting in 1999, and another example is in 2012, a Navy shooting. In the 2012 Navy shooting, the researcher suggested that the shooter was more accurate because he played a video game using a controller like this. What the media is doing is using emotional events in order to persuade people that the video games are bad and that they're the cause for these violent acts. The final thing that we need to consider is lack of evidence. Wolfgang Bosch is a prominent psychologist, and he went and diminished a lot of the research that was being presented. One of the main things he focused on was that the research was being conducted while they were playing the games and not after, which is what we're trying to figure out, if they make you violent even after playing. Another thing that he pointed out was that most people in these test environments were people who had played the games before, meaning that they already knew what they were getting themselves into, and they could already expect to be violent during playing. This goes along with Bosch's theory that as they played the games prior to the experiments, they developed an instinct to the games. Whenever the research group played the games, they were already violent, which created a biased pool. As you can tell, many of these claims may not make you violent, and it could just be bad research. After researching, I began to wonder, are video games really the cause of emotional and violent acts? With emotion and abundance of research, how can we fully support the claims that violent video games lead to real-life violence? Video games have evolved, and they've been around for a long time. And I'm beginning to question current research that suggests that they lead to violent acts. Should we agree because of the media? Current research points to the bad, but if you dig deeper, you may realize it could not entirely be true. Everyone has played violent video games, And I have never stopped playing a violent video game and felt real violence even after playing. And I doubt you have either. Thank you.
Phoebe. He's like,